Hello, everybody. This is Sequence Break, episode 18, Summoningsalt. And here he is, Summoningsalt. Hey, man, how you doing?
How's it going, everyone? I'm doing pretty well.
I got to ask you. So I've noticed that your screen name is depending on the service that you're on. If you're on Twitch or on YouTube, it's sometimes spaced in between Summoning and Salt. Do you have a preferred way of actually seeing it on screen?
Typically, I don't have a space there. There's a space on YouTube because I actually set that to my name. So like the first name is Summoning, the last name is Salt. I didn't set it up as a username.
I got it.
Because that was back when like Google Plus was being forced into everything you did on Google. So,
yes.
But yeah, typically I have no space.
Well, very cool. I think that many people are probably familiar with your world record progression videos on YouTube. If you have any sort of casual interest or hardcore interest in speedrunning, you've probably seen a Summoning Salt world record progression video. But also, I was looking up your speedrunpro.com profile, and you've actually been a speedrunner of quite a few games, not just Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which you currently have the world record in. I'm curious, when did you kind of start speedrunning, or when did you get into speedrunning? When did that whole thing start, and with what game?
So my speedrunning interest, it stemmed, from watching stuff on YouTube, watching like, Super Mario 64 beaten in however many minutes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when I really started to get into it was around the time of AGDQ 2014. I watched a handful of those runs when they happened live, and then I realized that a lot of those runners actually streamed on their own accounts. And there were three channels that I watched originally. I didn't have a Twitch account. I didn't really know how to get to their streams easily. So all I did was I had those links memorized, and I just checked them every day to see if any of them were streaming. And those three channels were Andrew G, who, Super Mario Bros. Record holder, Sinister One, who played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and Mitch Flower Power, who's the Mario 3. Watched him do a lot of Warpless back then. So, and I watch all three of those guys still today, and it's really cool. That's just kind of how I got into it, was just by watching them, and then that turned into me being like, okay, I wonder if I can do what they're doing. Let me try playing Super Mario Bros. Quickly, and I tried it, and I had a lot of fun with it, and it just took off from there.
It's great to hear some of the inspirations behind some of these things, because specifically those games and those runners come up quite a bit in people's influence. And I think part of it obviously has to do with the fact that they were streaming back in 2014, that's when I first started watching games done quick as well. And so it's kind of the things that sparks a lot of imagination and creativity in us. But is there a run that perhaps you remember from early on, or something that you were just like, might have, it sounds like you have these specific runners. Were those the kind of games that you wanted to attempt and to try to speedrun?
Well, to answer the first part of that, any runs that I remember vividly, I remember, so I made a video about Mitch's, well, I guess it wasn't just Mitch, but about the Super Mario Bros. 3 any percent warpless record.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part in the video where I talk about Mitch got the first ever early hammer no hands run, which is like a fancy term for basically meaning he got really, really, really good luck.
Yes.
And the reason I talked about that run so much in the video is because I think that is the first world record I remember seeing live, and I remember getting really excited by it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I gotta do everything speedrunning now. This is so amazing. And I remember being hyped myself, like more than Mitch was almost. It seemed that it was crazy. But and then of channels, the two games that I started really running were Super Mario Bros. Because it was short and easy and I could play it easily, and Punch-Out actually came a while later because it's definitely a tougher run to learn, and the origins of that for me were basically just saying, okay, I've seen Sinister One play this game so many times now, I wonder if I can try doing some of the things he does, because I've seen it so much. And I just practiced and practiced and practiced, and it built from there.
It's funny, and I gotta I congratulate you, but it's also kind of crazy. I was looking at your profile, and you have a sub 5 minute on SMB1, which I'm not sure when you started running the game, but that's that was a much smaller list than it is now, and where your time sits on the leaderboard. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the highest I think I ever was on that leaderboard was about 15th place. and now so many other people have run it that I'm down to like 60th place. So
It still
that
blows
game's
my
like exploded.
dude. It really has, and it still blows my mind that like sub 5 minutes is just kind of like a standard for that speed run now. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, like over 100 people have it. And I remember when I remember the first time I looked at the Super Mario Bros. Leaderboard, 4 people had a sub 5. That was it. So it's insane what's happened.
That's crazy. I'm curious when you got started in Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Were how many people? Like, what was the leaderboard like at that point? You mentioned that Sinister was kind of one of the inspirations there, and what was the leaderboard like at that point?
So we're talking like mid to late 2014 here, and back then there were essentially 3 people who had done a video recorded run of Punch Out,
Oh
to
wow,
my knowledge.
jeez.
Sinister One was the record holder. Zallard One, who you guys probably know from all the amazing things he does at GDQ events, he was pretty close behind him. And then this guy named Cananophone, who played the game on emulator, and he's just a really interesting runner because at one point he held a world record for the most random fight in the game, Don Flamenco 2, but he never put too much time into running the whole game. But anyway, the whole point is the community was really small back then, and now it went from 3 runners to we're up to over 40 now, so that's something at least. And yeah.
It's kind of insane and crazy where the game has gone. One of the things I noticed right away is that the most popular category is considered single segment. And would you mind just briefly telling us a little bit what a single segment run is? Because I don't think we were so familiar with the any percents and 100% and things like that. What is a single segment run?
Yeah, single segment, it means the same thing as any percent, where you're just getting through the whole game as fast as you can. But the origin of the name is because Animals Archive, the website that some of you guys have probably heard of and are familiar with. It's kind of out of fashion nowadays, but it used to be this where you could go submit your runs in like a really high quality format, and they'd verify them and they'd be published on their website and get a lot of attention. And Punch Out back then had a couple different types of runs. There was a segmented run where there's 4 different circuits in Punch Out, which is just a group of fighters. And a segmented run was you'd put your 4 fastest segments you could get. Like you'd record one segment over and over and then submit that, and then your next segment, record that over and over and submit that. And that was called a segmented run, putting all of those runs back to back. And then from that, it developed into a single segment run where the whole game was completed in one segment. And that's what we run today. And it's just the same thing as any percent.
This is kind of, I think, a loaded and an open-ended question. But what, if you can maybe simply, like, or not, maybe not simply, what makes the run so challenging? What makes Mike Tyson's Punch Out so unique and so challenging?
Um, it's interesting because I think of Punch Out as one of, how like most speed runs, like Super Mario Bros. For instance, the phrase we always use is like easy to learn but hard to master. Punch Out, I almost want to say, is the exact opposite, where learning every strat for every fighter is really hard. But once you're at the top level, maintaining consistency, I think, is easier than in other games. And I think the reason it's so hard to learn is, well, it's different from most other speed runs. It's a boxing game, but it's kind of a puzzle game and a timing and rhythm game at the same time. There's a lot of different strategies you have to use. There's so many you have to remember for different situations that come up. And also just timing of the punches is really precise. And I could probably get into that in detail a bit more later, but the Mike Tyson fight, last one in the game, and the whole fight, you're just trying to land as many frame perfect punches as you can, which means a punch that you have a 60th of a second to time. So that gives you an idea of how precise we're looking here, and stuff like that kind of carries through all throughout the run.
If you don't mind touching upon that a little bit, I mentioned to you that I had watched the commentary you did on your Twitch channel. You have a commentary track to the current world record run. And first of all, what is the current world record time? And what happens in that fight that makes that got a sub 15? Like how that barrier get broken?
So yeah, current record is 14:55.25. There are a few interesting things to talk about for that record, but basically the way it's worked is that every 4 years the Punch Out record or every 5 years rather, the Punch Out single segment record has gone down under a minute barrier. So in 2010, Sinister One got the first ever sub 17, And then in 2015, Zallard got the first ever sub 16, and now here we are in 2020 getting the first sub 15. And if you went back 5 years ago and asked Zallard, he would have said that time was definitely impossible. But the big thing that made that run possible, there's two big things. The first one is that we're just more consistent on Tyson at the end now because it's become easier over time to land all the frame perfect punches in the row because the timing is the same for every punch. You just need to do it a bunch to get really, really good at it and consistent. So, back then at 2:30 at the end of a run on Tyson would be considered good. But now, if you want to get a really good time, you want, like a 2:10 or a 2:15. And yeah, 14, the other part to that record to get a 14:55, anything under sub 15, was this thing called the Hippo Manippo, which it's RNG manipulation for the King Hippo fight, which used to be the most random fight in the game, just about, and it killed like 80% of the runs that got there. The fifth fight in the game, you need him to open his mouth 3 times on every punch. For every punch, he could either open his mouth or not open his mouth, and it's random if he does or not. And you need him to open his mouth 3 times to beat him. And these two guys named Lukendor and Zoxox figured out a way to make him always open his mouth on the first punch and potentially extend that to the second and third punches as well. So that just opened up this huge new era of punch out where we could get so many runs deep into the game without needing to keep resetting on Hippo. So those two things I think were the biggest factors to getting sub 15.
How was a strat like the Hippo manipulation discovered? Because it still blows my mind that these frame windows were discovered and all these, specific timing. How was that discovered?
They looked at the code of the game to find it. They looked at the RNG memory values for every input you press. I'm not going to get too in detail about every little way that makes it work, but
Sure.
essentially there's these RNG watches that are tracking your inputs.
Oh my gosh.
And figured out that as long as you're not pressing these two buttons, as long as you're not pressing right or up, the value actually, and that's one of the two values needed to control how Hippo opens his mouth. So they figured out as long as you're not pressing those buttons and you get to Hippo on the exact same time, then he will open his mouth on the first punch.
It's still it's crazy, but also awesome that things like that were discovered. And I assume when you say they, you meant like tassers or people who are strat hunting, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean the two guys, Lukendor and Zox, they were the
Cool.
guys who kind of uncovered everything for the trick.
That's really awesome, and it's pretty cool to see it in practice in the fight. If you end up watching the world record of this currently, you'll see the strat in action. And is there any way of knowing that you've executed the Hippo manipulation correctly? Obviously, the mouth opens on time, but is there any way of knowing that you've done the input correctly when you at the 5 minute mark?
Yeah, the way I do it is I use a video. Because the second part of the Manippo is getting to the fight within an 8 frame window, so the fight starts on the same frame because of the way that game times stuff. And the way that I do that is when I reset the game, I am starting a video, and that video, it at 5 minutes into that video exactly, which is when you need to press start on Hippo to get the manipulation to work, the video will start a Hippo fight, and if what's on your TV screen is perfectly in sync with the video on my laptop, then I know that I have done it correctly and I should be able to get past Hippo.
Oh, that's fast. That reminds me of Mitch's RNG manipulation for the early hammer manips when he was doing those strats.
Yeah, it's like that, but quite a bit easier because Mitch has like a 1 or 2 frame window several times in a row, and all we need to do is an 8 frame window once. So,
Got it.
yeah.
Fascinating. You early on you mentioned the thing about is kind of the reverse about how it's kind of easy to be consistent and learn. Not kind of easy, but there's a clear path to learn the strats to play this game at the fastest levels. Do you think that might contribute to being able to do these blindfolded runs that we've seen and that you've made a video about as well?
I think blindfolded is quite a bit different from single segment with your eyes open. The whole reason blindfolded works is really because of how good the sound cues are in the game. When they're winding up, you could usually hear them, but well, for some punch at least you could hear them. But other than that, knowing how the fighters work, knowing what their patterns are, what punches they can throw when, and then the buffer strategies that I talked about in the video, where you chain inputs together so that they arrive on the correct frames to hit the fighters and knock them down. So it's a lot of different things that go into blindfolded.
The run I find like just absolutely incredible that you've done. But on the towards the end, you mentioned during your commentary that there is time to save in the run. Where is that time coming from, and what do you think might be RTA viable at this point?
So it's very interesting because in the past month or so since I've gotten that record, I myself and the aforementioned Zoc Sox who helped with the Hippo Manippo, we've been working together to calculate essentially the exact odds in getting whatever time I want for the game because you can calculate the odds in getting each time on each fighter because it's known that Bald Bull, he has a 50% chance of giving you a star on this punch, which is like an uppercut you could hit him with. And he has a 25% chance of getting up with this health refill. And if you combine those, that's 12.5% chance of getting this time. You could do that for every single fight in the game. And then estimate what your odds are in getting a good Tyson fight. And essentially what we've concluded is getting under a 1450, so getting a 1440 something, assuming I execute perfectly, is about a 1 in 1,000 chance. That is where I want to take the run to. I want a 1440 something. And the time save for that would mainly come from the last two fights where I got suboptimal luck. Macho and Tyson, I could save about 5 seconds each on both of them for better luck. And potentially could go even lower. I think Zoc Sox ran 1 million simulations, and I think it was when he did 100,000 simulations, there was a single run that ended at 1429. So, you never know. It can go quite a bit lower. So we'll see.
I hear that number. I think 1 in 1,000. Like that's insane. That's crazy. But then again, you're probably putting. I mean, for a speedrunner, 1,000 attempts isn't that crazy. I mean, that's pretty reasonable, honestly.
Yeah, Punch Out, it takes a bit longer to do a reset because you hardly ever reset before King Hippo, which is 5 minutes into the run.
Got it.
And nowadays that we're getting past Hippo with the Hippo Manippo, we're typically not resetting before halfway through the game, at least if you're going for the record. So attempts take several minutes. So doing 1,000 attempts will take probably like close to a year if I'm doing it semi-regularly. But yeah, it maybe not quite that long, but it'll take a long time. So it'll be tough.
Before we move on, I do want to touch upon the Tyson fight because that's the thing I hear quite often, how different the Tyson fight is. Anytime you watch a Games of Cook, you hear about how the Tyson fight is so different than the rest of the run. What is it that is so different about the Tyson fight, and what makes it such a big part and a challenge of this run?
For a lot of the fights in Punch Out before Tyson, there's so many different patterns they could do, so many different punches they can throw, so many different health refills they can get up with. And for Mike Tyson, the difference is his fight is really simple. He's always going to throw uppercuts. He's always going to get up with the same amount of health. His pattern's always going to be relatively the same, other than the few delays he can do between his punches. The difference with Tyson is that he's so much harder to execute perfectly than every other fight because of the fact that you need to land frame perfect punches. 60th of a second to time them. And, compared to a fight like Super Macho Man, which is right before Tyson, where he has, literally dozens of different patterns he can give you, but none of them are that difficult to execute. There's no super precise punches or anything like that. So Tyson, he's simple, but he's so much harder than any other fight before him that it feels almost like you're playing something different at the end.
You mentioned the amount of frame perfect inputs you made to do the fight as it currently stands in the world record. How many are actually needed to do the fight in ideally perfect?
For a perfect Tyson fight, the world record on Tyson is 2 minutes and 1 second. That fight had, I believe, 19 frame perfect punches.
Wow.
Let's see, got 9, then 5, and then 7.
That's insane.
So, 21 rather. Okay, 21 frame perfect punches.
Jeez.
And that sounds hard, and it is hard. I want to say after I've played Punch Out at a high level for 5 years now and fought Tyson so many times, it's not as hard as it sounds because I have probably landed literally hundreds of thousands of frame perfect punches over the years. So I've had so much practice getting the timing down. It's not that hard. But yeah, to beat the Tyson record now, really, the luck is so much more important than the execution because you need a pattern from him where he doesn't delay at all. So,
So I got to tell you, it's pretty wild to hear that you still want to continue to bring your time down. What realistically, how does the grind work for you? Is it something you return to every day, or you want to just when you feel that? How does it work to return to Mike Tyson and try to bring this time down?
yeah, I go through phases. There's times when I just every day I'm like, all right, I want to play Punch Out. I want to try to beat the record, and that's how it was when I was trying to get under 15 minutes. I couldn't play every day, but I wanted to,
Nice.
and I did as often as I could. And now it's like, I kind of want to keep going, but also I could try just fighting Tyson instead to try to lower that record, or I could play some other game like Math Blaster, which is this other game that I used to hold the record in. That's really dumb. But yeah, it comes and goes, and I think the trick is to just try to not burn myself out because that's easy to do with a game as random as Punch Out. So.
I think it's pretty great, and I got to tell you, as a fan, it's been great to watch all of the top runners continue to run this game. I mean, we can Sinister one, Zallard one, there. It doesn't seem. It always seems like there at some point this game is going to come back up with the rotation, and I think that's pretty awesome. That just like any great speedrun, it's always undone. There's always going to be the next time,
Yeah, it's amazing too. We're still finding new strategies. Literally just a few days ago, the runner for this game named McHazard, he found a new strategy on Bald Bull where I can theoretically save over 7 seconds in that fight over what I have in the 1455. So,
Whoa!
New stuff's just getting found all the time, even now, which is just remarkable that we're still able to find stuff. So that helps keep it fresh and keep it new for sure.
Well, and that's something that's this year has just been. If you're any sort of fan or casual observer of the speedrunning community, some of the most popular games are being broken in new ways, left and right. Games that have been run for years now, especially the Zeldas and things like that. And it's first of all super exciting and fun to watch. But on the flip side of that, I think that's kind of this product of so many people coming to speedrunning, which it only makes your game better. When you get more people, you find these new strats and things like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Speedrunning's always getting bigger. It almost seems like exponential growth.
Yeah.
We were talking about Super Mario Brothers earlier, and 6 years ago there were probably only 20, 25 people running the game, and I think now we're up to about 1,000. So every year it just keeps growing. It's crazy.
Well, and I'm not. Yeah, we'd have to look at data and things like that. But I honestly think that your world record progression videos have actually kind of contributed to that growth, as you can see by the popularity of them on YouTube. And that's I think it shows we have tangible numbers to see the growth of some of the speedrunning in the community and all those kind of things. When did you kind of get interested in content creation, and what led you to create your first world record progression video?
It all ends up coming back to Punch Out. If you go on YouTube and type in Sinister 1 Piston Honda 2 Strategy Evolution, you will find this hour-and-a-half long video by Sinister 1 where he talks about the evolution of the world record on Piston Honda 2 character and Punch Out over the course of like 10 years, how people brought it lower. But the way he did it was just on a live stream. He showed all these different videos. He talked about the strategies, went on for over an hour. Then he had a Q&A at the end for like half an hour. So it was really interesting to me as a Punch Out runner hearing all this stuff. But I recognized that probably most people wouldn't be too interested in it. And then I realized, okay, I don't know how to video edit, but if I learned and if I was to make a video just like this, but condense it down and only have the interesting stuff like the fights themselves and quickly talking about the strategy, I could probably make this whole video in 15 minutes and it would be quite a bit more interesting to the average viewer. So I did that for Mike Tyson, the last fight in the game. I talked about that fight's world record history. And after I made it, I got really, really positive feedback. and about 4,000 views on YouTube, which at the time was just insane for me. I was like, whoa, 4,000 people watched that and liked it. That's amazing. And long story short, after I made a bunch of others, that video is at about 1.1 million views today. So it caught on.
It's crazy for to hear that you didn't have any experience or that you had to teach yourself video editing and everything, because one of the things I think is pervasive throughout all of the videos I've watched that you've produced, the storytelling is really strong. The elements of introducing it and making it easy for anybody to understand, whether you're a speedrunner or not, are just really strong. And I've watched the video you're talking about. I think I've watched probably all of your videos more than once, and the those elements still existed. Did you think about how to construct a story or anything like the storytelling elements of that while you were doing this, or was this just something to get the information? Like, what was kind of your approach early on?
Yeah, for the first video, I remember in like October 2016, I started working on it, and I made this Google document that I think I still have, where I broke down each section of the video and put what I want to talk about in each little part, all the way through the entire video. And I ended up abandoning that first draft because I tried to edit in Windows Movie Maker,
Oh, geez.
which, unless you're making like a slideshow,
Yes.
don't ever use Movie Maker.
Ever.
Yeah, and then like 2 or 3 months later, I came back to it with this editing software called Movavi, which is better, but still not ideal. And I did try to focus on the storytelling part of it. I knew I wanted to put a montage in the middle where Sinister lowered his record,
Yeah.
set to "Gonna Fly Now" from Rocky, and I did do that, so that was cool. But a lot of it, I think I developed over time from making so many of these videos and just deciding, okay, I think this part would be cool if I just had it fade in silently and just showed what happened at the end and showed his reaction. And over the course of 3 years now of trial and error, I think I figured out how to, really tell a good story.
There are many things that I think work so well in all the videos, but one of the things that I like that you do as well, is that you do show some of the challenges, and also at times you show some of the near misses, and I really appreciate it because it really shows kind of and highlights sometimes the struggles of speedrunning, and sometimes where we come so close, and like just recently I died on the last hit of the last boss on Rondo of Blood, and it's like I can feel the pain that sometimes some of these runners go through. How do you go about researching this, and how long does that process take?
The research for my videos has also evolved over time. Like when I first started, my third video was on Super Mario 64, and that was the first video that I actually didn't already have the whole history in my head, because I had seen Mario 64 runs, but I didn't know the history. So my entire research essentially consisted of finding a website that listed all of the world records, and then essentially just going from there and looking at the runs and being like, huh, looks like you went faster. Cool. Let me put that. And I talked a little bit with Cheese, who was the world record holder then and is still the record holder now. But I think he was the only guy I talked to, and I probably sent like 5 messages total to him. So basically, my research was just horrible back then. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to research for one of these videos. They still turned out okay just because the stories were naturally so cool. Like,
Right.
they're for Mario 64, Punkei missed the record like 3 times in a row due to an invisible wall that he couldn't even see at the very end of the last stage. So
So
stuff like that. But and now, it's evolved over time to now, for unless I already know a lot about the history of the topic I'm covering, which nowadays happens more and more just because I enjoy making those types of videos more. If it's a game I don't know anything about, like Castlevania, I had no idea about the history of that game. What I typically do is I invite 3 or 4 members of the community to a Discord server, and I just, over the course of a month, 2 months, we go back and forth talking, I put all this information into a Google document with notes for every single run. And that process, like I said, 6 weeks, something like that, just back and forth, asking them questions. A lot of times just having them tell me what's important about each run and what I should talk about. I really rely on other people for these videos. Like, I people say like, oh my God, how do you find all this info? And it all comes from other people. Like I couldn't tell you how people do the two cycle critical hit on the end at Dracula at the end of Castlevania. So this information all came from other people. And yeah, I get info from them, put it into a Google document that often ends up being 10 plus pages long, and then convert that into a script, which also ends up being 10 plus pages long usually, and then record it and video edit to the best of my ability.
I love that you're giving credit to people because I have noticed that the amount of people you thank at the end of your videos has definitely grown as the as the
Yeah.
years have gone by. I also think I'm friends with Mitch, and when you talk to him about like Mario 3, like he just knows a ton. He's so passionate and geeky about the game that it's great to talk to the people who run these things because a lot of times they know who did what and how it came about and things like that.
Yeah. The thing is, for a lot of these videos, a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, how'd you find all this info? I can't find it anywhere on the internet." And the truth is, it's out there. All this information is out on the internet,
Yep.
but it's usually in the heads of people that haven't written it down anywhere. So that's what I think my videos are able to do, and I'm really happy that they're at least providing a consistent source of information that wasn't out there on the internet before now.
For those who are writers, and I might have fancied myself a writer at one point, but definitely have abandoned it years ago. How long does it take you to convert all that to a script that you're going to end up recording and putting in a video?
I usually write the script as I go.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'll write, 3 paragraphs or so and then record that, edit it, and then write a little more of the script, edit it, and then keep going in 2 to 3 minute chunks all the way until the video's done. So just writing the script, it's how long that takes. But I would say doing the research definitely takes a lot longer than converting it into a script. Partially just because I probably don't edit my scripts as much as I should, but also just because finding out the information is really tricky and it takes a lot of time so that I can understand everything I need to know to explain it.
Makes a lot of sense. One of the things that, like I said, I mentioned it before, but I really appreciate how Castlevania is a great example. I had never played a Castlevania game until I saw your most recent video on Castlevania, and I understood what was happening because of how simply things were presented, and I appreciated that quite a bit. Like, in fact, I ended up playing 3 Castlevania games because of it. It looked like it was, hey, I want to try this. This seems cool. Uh, so I really appreciate that, and I think there was obviously got to be some editing that goes along into that. When you've kind of got a video that you're getting close to happy with, do you share that with anyone? Do you do what's like your review process?
Yeah, so I have a Discord server with moderators that essentially act as my editors and my checkers and people who are able to tell me this part doesn't make much sense, or I think you should change this, or just when I get excited about a part of the video, I send it to them and I'm like, oh my God, look how cool this part is. And I usually rely on them for a lot of that sort of stuff, but also the people who I'm working with, like Castlevania, I relied on a lot of the people who helped me make that video. I sent parts of it to them and we're like, all right, what do does this all make sense? Am I explaining all this correctly? Um, and that was something that I used to not do as much as I should because, look at some of my older videos. Mario 64 again. That's one that I just made it and was like, all right, cool, let me upload it now. Nothing I need to do in between, right? Nothing could go wrong here. And it turned out that video was like riddled with errors and a ton of stuff, partially because I didn't research, but partially because I also didn't have people proof watch it. So yeah, now I have a decent amount of people who are able to check it for me, and yeah.
That's very cool. That's part of the process because it's. I wouldn't know any different to tell you honestly, but the people in the SM64 community I'm sure, gonna be all over it. They're gonna know right
Yeah, they
away.
know. Those are the harshest critics of these videos, are the people who are in the community. You can tell when anything's not accurate.
And that's the one thing I think I appreciate is that like especially nowadays I know that there at least I assume that there's been some sort of process to get this here because you thank all these people who are usually have world record times, things like that.
Yeah, right. And usually all those people end up watching parts of or all of the video before it's uploaded. So
Makes sense. That kind of leads to the next question, which if there's one inevitability of speedrunning is that it's going to evolve, it's going to change, it's going to improve. Things are going to happen, and a lot of your videos have been on some of the most highly competitive speedruns that exist. Do you ever consider updating or changing or doing something on the same time? Like, does that even cross your mind once you've released a video?
Yeah, so I definitely have thought about either updating or redoing old videos before. I have a few concerns about doing that though, partially just because I have a pretty big subscriber base now that might not be interested in seeing a video I've already done before.
Makes sense.
And people tell me all the time, it's like, oh, dude, we'll watch whatever, it's fine. But people will say that, but will that actually happen? I don't know. So. But what my plan has been is that sometime in the future, I'm just going to go and redo some of my older videos and at the end also talk about the stuff that's happened since then. Especially videos where stuff was inaccurate, like Mario 64 or Super Metroid was one where I don't think I went in enough detail as I should. Like I made a 55-minute video about Castlevania, which is an 11-minute long run. Meanwhile, Super Metroid is like a 50-minute long run, and the whole video is only 23 minutes long. So probably gonna redo that one at some point and make it longer and more detailed. But yeah, the plan is I'm not just gonna update videos with what's happened since. I'm planning to go back and redo them from scratch.
I think that's pretty cool. That's awesome that you're even considering doing that because it's tough. I gotta imagine to cover a topic of like speedrunning where it changes so quick. Is there what's like the soonest or the quickest a world record has been broken that came out in one of your progression videos?
That's a funny question. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle definitely holds the record for that. I uploaded it July something 2018. And after the world record holder watched the video, he decided to do some world record attempts that same day, and he broke the record by like 20 seconds in that stream. So literally 4 hours, I think, after the video came out, it was outdated.
Oh, awesome.
So
Perfect timing.
that was fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I before I contacted you for the podcast interview, I joined your Discord that you have, and it's really cool. First of all, the gathering of people. It seems I was really noticed the respect and how nice everyone is in the Discord server. But you do have a place, about topics and things like this. How is there a formula or a process you use to pick the next topic, or is it things that you're interested in? Like, how do you decide what's going to be the next video you try?
There's a lot of different things that go into it. Lately, if you look at the topics I've covered, they have largely been stuff I already know about. Like, how many of my recent videos have been about Mario Kart? Probably like 3 or 4 in the last year and a half, or Super Mario Bros. Or Punch Out, all games that I run. A lot of them, especially lately, have been topics that I know a decent amount about already. Because I think I could tell a better story when I already know about everything and don't need to spend as much time researching and learning. And B, it's easier. It's nicer to be able to spend, 3 weeks on research instead of 8. So, for everything that goes into it, it largely just ends up being what I feel like doing, but I also take into consideration what other people want. I know a lot of people want me to do Zelda games like Ocarina of Time, but truth be told, I am not a huge Zelda fan. Sorry, everyone.
You've just disappointed like thousands of people. No, I'm just
It's
kidding.
possible I've never really played a Zelda game before, maybe. So, I'm not like ruling them out, but
Sure.
also there's a reason why I've only done one Zelda video over the last 3 years that I've been making these. So, yeah.
No, totally understandable. And I think that's, it's funny you mentioned that because I wasn't surprised at all when I looked up your runs that you had done and seen, that you were a Mario Kart runner, that you were a Mario runner, because of the fact that the videos there's a certain passion to them. It's obvious that you care about the games that you're doing videos on, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's a balance I need to strike too between just what I'm interested in and what other people want to see. And I know that as I go on, I'm not going to be able to just do Mario games because one, people are going to get sick of it, but also I'm going to run out eventually. So I try to space it out, put the Castlevanias, put the Sonic Adventure 2 battles, the Metroids stuff in there that people also want to see.
Oh, it's. I think it's great that we have these things, and I'm so thankful that you make these videos that you do, because they really highlight some gameplay that before I started watching speedruns, I didn't even know some of this stuff was possible, and it's really awesome to see high level runners do what they do at the highest of levels, and be so and see it highlighted in a way that if you ever wanted to know about a game, you can look up one of your videos and get a really great foundation before you go watching speedruns live or things like that to see what actually goes on.
Yeah. That's one thing that I've heard a lot of people say about my videos, I think, is they like that they're not necessarily huge speedrunning fans. They just like that they can get the highlights of it and the points of it that they want to see without having to watch every single attempt, but still getting the idea of what goes into the run. So
it's a real challenge sometimes to like look up historic runs, and I only say challenge because how do I put together, how did this work in a sequence? And even that, the SRC site is not always the most conducive. You can look at obsolete runs and things like that, but it doesn't highlight it the way that you do it. And so every time I discover a new game that you've done a video on, it's really it's entertaining, but it's super informative. It's a great way to appreciate what's been done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That's my goal. I want to get the information out there in hopefully an entertaining way that will draw people to the community. So,
one quick question, and I have to be. I noticed that you participated in the classic Games Done Quick anniversary that they had. Was there? Were you nervous at all about doing a live marathon? Had you done one before?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. I've done a few marathons before. In 2017. I think there was the Hurricane Harvey relief done quick that GDQ did, which is a marathon that a lot of people don't even know that it happened because it's not on YouTube anywhere.
Oh, no.
And they don't really talk about it anymore. And the only place my run exists is in the past broadcast section of Games Done Quick's Twitch page.
Easy to find.
So I don't know if they're ever planning on doing anything with that. But in 2017, I did a run there, which was also just punch out single segment that I was pretty nervous for. So, but yeah, we've also done some punch out tournaments before. Nowhere near on the scale of Games Done Quick level, but I've done a few live runs before, so I was nervous, but I'd been there.
That's one of the places I started with some of the research, and I appreciated that. Once again, you talk everything out, and it was some really great insight. So if you're at all interested, I encourage you all to check it out because it's a good run, but also there's a lot of interesting commentary that goes along with it. That's just slightly different than what's on the world record commentary. If people want to find your work and they've never seen it before, I know it's kind of silly, but where can people find you? YouTube, Twitch? Give it a little shout out there.
Yeah, everything is just under Summoningsalt. On YouTube, it's 2 words, and on Twitch, Twitter, it's all 1 word. But I don't think you'd have too much trouble finding it. I don't really tweet too much because I don't know, I'm just not too into it. Like I check Twitter, but I don't really post that much. And I stream on Twitch semi-regularly. It just kind of depends what my schedule is, what I have going on, and it's usually Punch Out nowadays. And then YouTube, I try to only upload world record progression stuff. So that comes out every 2 or 3 months. So
I remember watching the most recent grind on Twitch, and there were days there were time periods where you were going almost every day. But then, I know real life and all that kind of stuff gets in the way. So, but it's a lot of fun to watch the grind. There's a lot of resets.
It's funny, like some days, even that I'm resetting like over and over again, it's I'm still having fun talking with people in chat and everything. So it's all fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for doing this. I appreciate your time, and good luck on the Mike Tyson Punch-Out runs coming up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to need it. So, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. All those things go a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm on Twitter @LatMackey, or you can also join the LatMackey Discord, where we have a sequence break channel. We talk about guests, we have questions. It's really interactive, really fun. Please feel free to stop on by. Thanks so much. See you in the next one.